developing language around money is something that is not taught. Sometimes fear and resentment, guilt, shame, all of those things can come up and cause people to have challenges with, having open, honest conversation. If we can do this, then there's not a lot we can't do together where it concerns our money.
Welcome, everyone, to today's episode. I'm Bjorn Larson, Director of Financial Education at Thrivent. If you're new to Thrivent, we are a financial services company that puts generosity at the heart of saving and investing. We help people build, grow, and protect financial well-being through purpose-driven advice, investments, insurance, banking, and generosity programs. I am so excited to have a conversation today with Ericka Young, my friend and certified financial coach, best-selling author, and expert in financial wellness for couples. Today, we're diving into how couples can unite on their financial journey, not just crunching the numbers, but building true financial intimacy. Ericka, thanks for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about this today.
Yeah, I can't wait to have this conversation.
Yes.
So let's just jump right in and hear a little bit more about what you believe or why you believe financial alignment is so crucial for couples.
Honestly, alignment to me is the perfect word. Alignment shows that you're on the same page, you are unified, that you're a team in particular. And so I think it goes beyond all of the numbers. People always want to go to budgeting and bills and how do we get the things done? And really, alignment is about building trust. It's about making sure that you're on the same page with your value set and that you're building the life that you really want together. And so I think if we use that term universally in how people relate to money, then it kind of shifts the conversation from the rote, mundane type of things and make sure that couples are truly heading in the same direction. So it just reduces stress, and I think that that's crucial in any financial conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you totally nailed it on trust. And so as we think about having open and honest money conversations, how can we really work to build that trust?
Trust is a key element here because I think a lot of people feel that money is very, very personal. It is close to their heart. They work really hard to make the money, and so they want to ensure that they get to do with it what they want. And so it's hard when, for instance, a couple might have been together for a while and they're having a baby maybe, or something's changing in their life. And so you want to make certain that the money is going where it needs to go. But when you haven't been together and you're just forming this new relationship, sometimes it's hard to understand that somebody is potentially going to have your best interest at heart. And so we have to make sure that people understand different perspectives, that they're clear on their goals, that their dreams are shared, and know what it represents in their life versus thinking that I think we have to ask more questions and make sure that we're having a deeper understanding with our partner, because honestly, if we build trust, that can be vulnerable. That causes people to kind of take a step back and say, wait, are they going to know all of my business? And when you're a team, that is what happens. And you want to make sure that you're understanding exactly what each other wants and needs and how you can help fulfill the goals as well.
Yeah, I love what you said about that team approach, and having those shared dreams together, because finances can kind of seem intense, that it's there's always sort of stress and conflict that can come from that, but it can actually be really fun. If you have a team approach and if you're dreaming about fun things together, I think that actually can draw out some of the best pieces and components of this world, especially when it comes to couples. So what are some of the most common misconceptions as it comes to financial alignment?
People think that they're supposed to be exactly the same. My husband and I have not ever been the same about money matters. When you start to really think about it, we're two different people and you're not going to see everything exactly in the same way. My husband will explain something to me and I'm like, no, that's not the way you do it. And we'll get to the same result. It's just new math, right? And so it doesn't mean that you're going to agree on everything. It just means that you're heading in the same direction. And so I like to visualize a couple in a potato sack race. And I've done this where you put one leg in and your partner puts their leg in and you're trying to go somewhere together. And if you're going in different directions, both of you are falling down, right? So when we're talking about, making sure that you have alignment, you're just heading in the same direction. You're not going to maybe have the same leg in the potato sack, right? Because that might be awkward too. So you have to make sure that you're working together. And it just requires some open communication. And I think developing language around money is something that is not taught. That's not something it's not inherent. It doesn't just land in our laps and we know how to do it. We have to develop it and work it just like any other muscle. And so I just think it just requires intentional effort. And if you can put that forth, then you can show your partner that you care about them and your financial future, all the better for everybody.
Like having to work at it. I mean, that's a really good point that we often just expect it to happen or it'll come out naturally. But I think we oftentimes see how if we don't work at it, it can lead to some challenges. So do you have like a story at all of like financial misalignment and how that led to an unexpected challenge in your own life?
Yeah, absolutely. My husband and I disagreed about one thing in particular, and I'll just say it had to do with credit cards. Okay. And we weren't in alignment, and I was the one that was upset. He wasn't upset. But I had to I wanted to ask him questions so I can understand where he was coming from, why he had this particular point of view. And asking good questions is a really important part of this. And he was very good about just listening to my rebuttals and why I was having a hard time with it. And I think listening is important and not interrupting and thinking you have all the answers. But that definitely has shifted both of our perspectives because I have an understanding about why these things were important to him. And he also has an understanding about why it might make me uncomfortable, for instance. And so we know how to handle each other in that way. And I think that happens a lot with couples. Specifically, I think it happens when one person really wants to get out of debt and the other one thinks it's not that important. Or one person wants to save for the future and the other person is thinking it's so far away, right? And if you can ask good questions, then you can help diffuse some of what might be challenging in that space. And just seek understanding. Just be curious. I like, to just be curious. Just think about what's possible if you can really get an understanding of why people think the way they do. That's important.
Yeah, that art of like asking good questions. I mean, that's just great conversation in general, but to do that with your significant other, especially when it comes to money, can be a great way to approach it. Otherwise, you can sort of lord your beliefs over somebody, and that can cause a lot of friction and can make it really challenging to figure out how to move forward, especially if you're in that potatoes race you're talking about.
Yes.
That can be tough.
And questions in particular, I would say let's not say why questions. I think that's accusatory, right? So if we're talking about a good question, what makes you think that? How does that make you feel? Help me understand. Tell me again, can you describe? These are some really good questions to ask versus why did you do it that way? Because it's a different tone. And the way you come off is really important if you want to be received well, right? If you want to show your partner that you care. So I just think that the way that we do things is half the battle, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can kind of lead into other areas of life depending on how we handle our finances. So could you just talk about how financial alignment impacts other areas of your relationship with each other or parenting or even career decisions?
One thing with money is that it touches all aspects of our life, right? You can't go to the grocery store without it, right? Your kids cannot get into sports nowadays without it. You can't go on a vacation without money. And so alignment needs to happen in all of these different spaces. And if we don't discuss it and figure out where do we find commonality, it will affect everything. I consider the budget, if you will, like the heartbeat. It flows to everything else in the body, right? And so if you haven't figured out the finances, then it's hard to know where to delineate the money, right? So I just think it influences your parenting, it influences your career choices potentially, as well as any long-term planning. And if we are not making it a high priority in the relationship, then it's easy for those things to cause disagreements, right? So I think tension is a big deal. When people are misaligned, tensions explode. And that's why people shy away and they don't want to have these conversations.
Totally. You mentioned that the budget is sort of the heartbeat of your financial life and maybe even kind of what leads to whether you have good or bad conversations. What if you have somebody that is sort of the stronger budgeter or goal setter in the relationship? how do you work through that if they're the one that's sort of setting the direction? And how do they have that conversation with the other person in a helpful way so that we don't lead to the
Yeah.
financial misalignment?
Yes, that's a good question because it happens in almost every relationship. There's rarely, if ever, I've worked with hundreds of people over the course of the last 20 years, and it rarely is that there's two people who like the budget. There's usually one nerd, one person who thinks that spreadsheets are the best things in sliced bread, and the other person who's like, do not get me near a spreadsheet, right? And so if we're talking about, that difference in what people like and enjoy doing and where it concerns the money, I think that the person who's the budgeter is the one who really needs to come and say, hey, I want your input. Help me know what's happening in the next 30 days. Did I forget something in this plan that we put together? And the other part of this is don't put them in the position to figure out all the numbers ahead of time if that is not their strong suit. I think it's a conversation of how do we want this to look? And I want you to change something on here, even if it's just one thing. That means you're paying attention. But I think it's honestly a good balance because if there's someone who is really strong in the budgeting space, and then there's another person who is the one that just wants to go off, have fun, and they are taking care of the household and spending more of the money, honestly, one person helps you to have a good future because they know how to plan and save for the future, and the other one knows how to help everybody have fun, right? You need both. You need both personalities.
Yeah. And that's where, I think, talking with someone too, we at Thrivent, we've got Money Canvas, which is a coaching program that's free for anyone to use. And so having a couples group or couples even come together in a relationship to a coach could be really helpful to have somebody ask those questions. And same thing with a financial planner. We've got oodles of advisors that would love to work with couples and help them to work through different goal setting and that sort of thing. So that third party even sometimes can be really helpful to ask good questions and draw out both people at a kind of in an equal way. That's one reason my wife and I have started working with an advisor so that we can come together so that it's not me just taking care of everything as you would expect, but us going together to work with somebody.
And a third party can help you see your blind spots. I can't see what's behind me, but a person who can see my blind spots is someone that can help me to say, okay, think of it this way. Have you thought of this? And I think it's valuable to have an outside third party to help uncover some of that and to bring to light some of the more important things as well, because we don't know everything. I've had coaches and I've also had advisors, and I'm a coach. And so I think it's important that we get the assistance of people who are either further down along the road or they're experts in their field so that, honestly, when you employ experts, they help you become stronger at what you're doing.
Totally. So as we start to think now a little bit more about building trust through conversations, what are some signs that a couple needs to improve their financial communication?
Yeah, that's a biggie. We could really start with money fights, arguments, disagreements. You're not seeing eye to eye. I think a big one that we don't talk about enough of is secrecy. You're hiding things that are happening. And for instance, people might not know about how much debt you have on a particular credit card, and avoiding financial topics, just not wanting to even discuss it. And that could mean that they're shutting down and they're pretending they're not interested, right? To some degree, we're all interested in making sure that we have a solid financial future. It's just sometimes fear and resentment, guilt, shame, all of those things can come up and cause people to have challenges with, having open, honest conversation. And it makes sense. I think money is funny. I think it is a necessary thing, but not everybody is taught. Honestly, we're not taught from a young age how to navigate the whole financial system. And so we kind of have to figure it out on our own. And so those emotions around money are understandable, but I do believe that they can be overcome, and you can have some level of awareness and understanding of what you can do in order to improve in those situations. So just identifying it, I think, is the first step.
And you made a good point there too, that how we grow up, what we see our parents, others, just sort of how we see money being felt about, if that's a way to say it, if it's always stressful, if it's always quiet, if it's always in a different room, if it's like that can really impact how we think about money in the realm that it should fit in, and that can bleed into our relationships. And wow, that can really create a complicated conversation.
Yeah,
that we're trying to have.
absolutely. I actually think that if couples start with some of those conversations around how they were taught money or what they witnessed around money, if you begin there, don't necessarily start with the budget and let's hash out the numbers. Let's start with, what did your parents teach you about money? What does your family, your of origin look like where money is concerned? And I have vivid memories of, for instance, my grandfather bought my mother a car with cash. That was a very pivotal memory for me, that he, one, had enough money to do so, and two, in cash, and how it blessed her as a single parent. I also have other memories of financial mismanagement, not just with, in my household of origin, but just other people, maybe in my family and things like that. And so when you think about how these shape you, it can cause some, unrest. Like, what if someone does this to me because I saw this in my house? And we have to really be mindful that those things play out really, they're deep-seated memories that cause us to mistrust people.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like even just the thought of being flexible within a relationship too, and being willing to both ask really good questions, but also to flex your normal style.
Yeah.
Maybe you're a saver, but then in this situation, you're being pushed. Like you said, it's good to have kind of two different, the here and now person and the future person, helping each other to live in the present, but plan for the future. And that just begins with great communication. So as couples are trying to build better communication, what do you recommend for how do you create safe spaces for vulnerable money conversations to happen, especially given the fact that people have such different backgrounds often that they're bringing into that relationship?
Yeah, a safe space is important. I feel statements are really helpful. I feel this way. This is how this makes me feel. Instead of you made me feel this way. I think, again, our approach is half the battle, and discussing our money past and how that has shaped us today, and creating a non-confrontational environment. I think it is perfectly fine for couples to set some ground rules around a money conversation. So I just want to talk for 5 minutes without being interrupted. That could be a ground rule, right? Or I don't want any advice. I just want to share how I felt about this. And because I think when we're looking to figure out what our next move is, our next comment is, it can interrupt the flow of someone else. And so just stay in reality and stay present and listen to what people are really saying. I think the other thing, honestly, this is just really good communication skills, is to repeat what your partner said. Like, so I hear you said this. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so, and I think that that's important because we don't value open communication around money. I feel like it's a language. I really do. And if you can learn your partner's money language, you are so much better off.
Yeah, that is a very deep thing to say, because I think that right there can take your relationship to a whole nother level, especially when you're able to talk about such a challenging topic that money can be, but to do it in a way that's helpful. And I love those tips of reflecting back what you heard and asking good questions and just working hard to not be confrontational, because that oftentimes can just immediately end that what was going to be a helpful conversation. It just shuts it right down, and now you can't get anywhere you're hoping to.
And I think for the person who is naturally the money person, don't have a day-long money summit. Let's not try and put everything out on the table in one day. I think it needs to just become a natural part of conversation. We're at dinner and we're having a conversation about A, B, and C, or we are with the kids and we are talking about the grocery amount, the budgeted amount, or we're talking about going to Starbucks and we're saying, okay, this is it for the week, right? Because this is, what we put in the budget for that. And just making it natural versus it being something that is, we're going to spend all this time sitting down for 2 hours. We have to block it out. We need, a babysitter to make it happen. That is intimidating for a lot of people. And so we just need to create an environment for reducing the stress, reducing it.
Yeah, totally. I love, those are such great tips. What role does transparency play in building trust around finances?
Huge. It's big. And when I think about transparency, I think about just laying all your cards on the table, right? Like we're not having any secrets. So I love it for couples to actually have a dollar amount that they don't spend above without having a conversation. Even if it's gift giving, honestly, it does take some of the intrigue around gift giving out. But transparency is just like we're not popping up with anything, new. We're not hiding the packages behind the bushes, We're just basically saying, I care enough about you that I really want to make sure that you understand what we have going on here, and we're a team here. I do think that some couples can have a separate account, but they agree upon how much money is going in that account, right? So that there isn't, secrecy around that. We're not hiding anything. I think that's the biggest thing. But I think it's important to share all important and relevant information. I am notorious for telling the story that before my husband and I got married, in our premarital counsel, they asked us to bring our credit reports. And I was so afraid. I was in my early 20s, but I was so afraid of what the pastor was going to ask us to do. And he handed mine to my future spouse and his to me.
Nice.
He didn't even look at it. And I looked at him and I was like, are we really doing this? But there needed to be no secrets. And the beauty of it in our story in particular is that we both had the same amount of debt. The mishaps with money, we talked through those. And really, we were able to walk down the aisle and there wasn't anything he didn't know about my money story because it was right there on paper and we had to have conversations. But it is nerve-wracking and I understand it. And especially if you have lots of financial history, that can be a challenge. I don't think that people have to divulge everything all at once like that necessarily, but I do think we need to get to a place where you have a foundation that you can. And if you can build that type of a foundation, then that makes it just easier to ensure that you're sharing as much as possible so that, it's us against the world, right? We're the team. And instead of we're on opposing sides.
Yeah. I love that team approach that you're talking about and just like being willing to be open and having even that dollar limit. I think that is a really helpful way to check in and just have a kind of like a flag, like, oh yeah, that's right, we need to talk about this. I'll just make sure that I always spend below the amount. No, forget. No, just don't tell my wife. No.
And not every day. Not every day, right?
Exactly. But it's good to have that because I think that's one way to do that. And then the premarital counseling, that's wow, what a great thing to have to do. That was kind of intense. But
yeah, it was intense and it surprised us. But honestly, again, it was one of those foundational moments where I said, well, if we can do this, then there's like not a lot we can't do together where it concerns our money. And so it was the shock and awe factor, and it worked.
Yeah, nice. That can have a big impact on us. So you talked a little bit about how, like, when couples are like either getting ready to be married or just starting to date or whatever, that they kind of have the view of my money. It's my money. That's your money. Let's keep things separate. And I also know couples that have this approach to their finances. But do you have any suggestions on practical steps to kind of merge that or move that to our money in the future?
Yeah, that's so important. One of the things that I think is really neat, if people are planning a wedding, the easiest thing for them to do is to merge the finances around the wedding itself, and have that to be open. It's a first pass at figuring out how to manage money together. And so how they decide to do that is great. They can figure that out, but be open. Discuss habits and goals and what it is that you want. I think if you start with numbers again, that makes it challenging for people. We want to be disarming when we're having conversations around what is mine and ours and that kind of thing. And so I think we just need to make sure that people have check-ins. I love for couples to sit down a good 15 minutes a week. If they can do 15 minutes a week and talk money, then we can figure out how to move forward on what is ours together and create that common space. And I'm a big fan of merchant accounts, and I think that there's a process there, but I think also it's unifying, and that makes it easy for transparency to occur. Yep. And so when couples are actually in the space where they feel like merging accounts is possible for them, that's, to me, it is the highest level of being able to share everything, that we're not behind the scenes doing other things that are undermining the money conversation.
Yeah, it sort of just helps with that transparency factor, that trust factor. And I love even the thought, like you said, of starting to have conversations even weekly about future goals. And, one way to, even if it's a new relationship, you probably haven't practiced really having goals together. So maybe it could be a fun goal. I mean, maybe it is the wedding, or maybe it's the honeymoon, or maybe it's something that you're going to do that's the house, or whatever it is that's kind of coming up that can be that first big goal that you are both excited about, that would be a natural place to start to come together and save money around or something like that. But I imagine just figuring that out initially is sort of a tricky thing.
It is.
Couples.
It can be.
Yeah.
Some of our best money conversations were in the car on road trips, because you can't get away. You can't get away. Like, you have their undivided attention, and you put some good music on, and you're just heading off to wherever you're going, and you have a captivated audience. And so sometimes that's a good time to, let's figure out some of this stuff out. You know what I mean? Let's just make sure that we're having a good understanding of where we want to go. And so I found that in the early part of our relationship, road trips made a big difference in us paying attention. And so I encourage that for a lot of people. You're going on a road trip, these are the questions you ask each other, and I'll give them questions to ask.
Nice. Yeah, that is a good time. It's you're getting out of your norm, and you have maybe a way to not have to look at each other the whole time.
That's true. It's true. You can look out the window and say, wait a minute, I need to say this, but I just don't want to see your facial expression when I say it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Are there any, so we talked about the good parts of merging finances. Are there any pitfalls that come with merging finances that you have found?
Absolutely. I think trust is built over time. And I find that I've had lots of couples who have had individual finances for many years. So they've been independent, and they're leery. They're hesitant to combine finances because they haven't done it before. And so I do think that it's great to have a household account and just say, okay, what are we going to put in this household account? What are the bills that are going to come out of this account? You can start there, and eventually, if you choose to merge everything, great. But I think that the biggest thing is to understand that if you're going to have separate accounts, that each person knows what's going in there, right? And that they actually have access to be able to see. I just think I call it a love note. When you give your partner access to the different parts of your life, your finances, your insurance, and, your investing accounts, where they actually know how to navigate the space. I call it a love note. You're telling them, I love you enough, I care about you enough to give you access to this. And I think sometimes that can be challenging when you've operated independently for so long. But I think it's important to know their background, their habits, when is a good time. And I just think that it's important that you don't, put any boundaries up that are going to keep you separate. And so they have to figure out their timing. Sometimes it takes a year, sometimes it takes less time, but everybody's on their own pace. And I think if you're looking to be unified, the accounts is a really good way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love the encouragement, too, that it doesn't just have to happen all overnight either. I think that's very freeing for most people who just sometimes only have this much time to care about finances, and it feels like very cut and dry on how to approach it. So to have some flexibility to say, well, just start with this, start with a shared goal, or start with the wedding, or start with the household account, and do that together. And then you'll figure out the next step that you take together as you start to build trust and build your relationship. One really tricky area in finances is debt. And how have you seen people sort of work through that when they join together as a couple? Maybe somebody has a lot of debt. Let's just say, student loan debt. Somebody has a huge amount of student loan debt. Somebody doesn't. How do couples deal with that?
Yeah. Ideally, they deal with it together, and they just put everything together, and all debt is getting paid off together. Ideally, smallest to largest, let's pay them down. But I also think that, again, that can take some time, especially if it's a lot of debt. Student loan debt it can be huge. It can be large amounts. And you don't want to have resentment, right? You don't want to have resentment for having to pay someone else's debt, if you will. And so I think that requires lots of conversations. But I think that people can do it. And it's the easiest, simplest way to make sure that you're paying everything off. Just list them together. And when one person pays a debt off, they both win. Like, that's the honest truth, because you're a team. And so when one person gets something paid off, great. Well, let's have a little party for them and keep it moving. But it helps everybody when you're working on that together. It makes it easier for you to, for instance, to get a house together, right? Both names can be on the account if you have favorable credit, right? So when we're thinking about the benefits of doing it that way, that's helpful, right? Sometimes you need to see, why am I doing it this way? And let's talk through that. What's in it for me? Honestly, people want to know that. And so I think if we can figure out why we're doing what we're doing and what the outcome is likely to be, that can be very helpful. Sometimes it's challenging for folks to feel like they want to pay off someone else's debt, but when you're a team, you're a team. So
yeah, I love that. I love that message of just like building trust, building relationship, sort of being transparent and doing it together as a team. And the fact that it's kind of a superpower, you know, like, and it is maybe hard to see it at the start, especially if somebody's bringing in a lot of debt, but to know that you're in it together as a team is really, really huge. Mm-hmm. Now, are there any situations where keeping your finances separate is beneficial?
Yeah. I mean, I think in the beginning, when we're talking about blended families or someone with a business, people who actually want to feel a little bit of autonomy over their own finances, again, they might have some separate accounts. I think a household account is still favorable. But when you're rebuilding trust, sometimes trust has been broken. Mm-hmm. Those things happen, right? And so when you're rebuilding, that could be a place where you might want to take it a little slower. But the key is just to not have any secrets, right? And so just to know, it might be good to do some check-ins. How are you feeling? Where are we on the trust meter, right? So on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you feel like we are? Are we making progress in this area? I think that's important. And so we just want to reduce tension, reduce stress so that we can make good decisions around money. And I think that's ultimately the goal. Sometimes people feel attacked if they're not in a place where they're ready to blend finances and move as a unit in that way. And I think, we just have to really let them know, here's the goal, and this is why, this is how come this is important. And I want to ensure that when you have trust in this area, it does bleed over into other areas of your life. So most people, if they can manage money well together, then there's a lot of other things in their relationship that will be able to be managed well too.
Yeah, totally. And I think like even in shared finances, you can do some separate things. So one thing that we do in our marriage is we each have our own credit card, just so we can sort of have our own credit that's being built over time, and so we can get gifts for each other without the other person knowing, under the dollar limit, of course.
There we
don't
go.
Have to check in. And then the other thing that we do is we have fun money. So just sort of no strings attached, a certain amount that we can each spend however we want. And that's shared within the budget, but we also know that can be spent, and we don't have to check in with each other on where that money goes.
Yeah, we don't need to have to check in about 7-Eleven. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, I think having that autonomy is important for people. I mean, we're adults, and we want to make sure that we can move freely, if you will. But again, as long as you're on the same page, that's what matters.
Yeah. So I know earlier you had talked about how oftentimes in relationships there are just some big time differences in there's like a financial person and maybe somebody that isn't, and sometimes money personalities can really be different. There's a big time saver and then a big time spender, and so how do couples find common ground within these different personalities?
Yeah, I like to say that I think we need to break it down a little further. I think having a spender and having a saver is very normal. First of all, it is more common than people want to admit. Everybody thinks they're the special one. Like, why are one is a saver and one is a spender? If both of you were spenders, you would never have any money for the future. If both of you were savers, you would never have any fun, right? So both of you is necessary, right? So we need to have an understanding that it's good that people differ. You just want to ensure that you're having conversations about where you each want to go. You can't spend all the money on travel and think you're going to also have a future, and you can't save only for the future and then have no fun today, right? So I think it's important to have some empathy for people's different situations and what has brought them to this place where they are right now. I think it's important to know that your different styles and flavors come from your experience. And again, talking about, your past and how you think about things, trying to understand that is key. But I also think, having conversation brings you to a compromise. And so a lot of people don't like compromise. Let's just be honest. They feel like they're giving up something. And I say, if not now, if we can't do this now, when can we do it? It's not never. It's just, if not now, when? So if the compromise is we need to reduce how much we're saving for this trip, and the trip doesn't happen this year, then maybe it's going to happen next year. Let's clarify. And so I think compromise doesn't mean that somebody wins and someone loses. Maybe it is just a shift in how you're thinking about that, right? So I think that people always feel like they're giving something up. They always feel like they're giving something up. And if we can help you to see that you're not necessarily giving it up, it just might mean that that time frame is different than you might have expected it to be. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think people, if we can figure out where our goals overlap, and if we're getting out of debt, that means we have more money to enjoy or more money to put towards the future. Or if we have an emergency fund that helps us to relax a little bit versus, feeling like, oh no, what happens in a rainy day situation? We're not always depending on debt for that. We need to understand the why behind it. I think that's really important. And so when goals overlap, that makes it easier for everybody, to be honest.
I love what you said about empathy too, and how having that is, that's crucial for trust and having kind of that foundation of just belief in each other. But it can really help, I think, to strengthen the relationship, so that, because sometimes things happen externally that we are both impacted by, that we cannot change. And so then you can be on the same team, and you can both acknowledge that, well, we may have to change our timeline for this goal that we had. Maybe we had a fun trip plan, but then a huge medical bill hit and we can't do that anymore. Or maybe there's a sickness in the family and now we have to put off the new home we were going to buy, or whatever it is, the trade-offs that come. You've got to work now on the trust. So I love that idea of just breaking that up into weekly short conversations to start working on your money relationship that will hopefully lead to even just a better, more fulfilled relationship, to help that foundation get stronger, so that no matter what happens, you have empathy and trust built up, and that can help kind of combat against the different types of personalities that are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important that we understand that we're two unique people and our experiences have shaped who we are. And if we can understand that, then we can have an appreciation for our partner in a way that maybe we wouldn't have before. So to me, that's what empathy is.
Yeah, and it seems like kind of identifying the type of money personality that you are earlier in your relationship would be really helpful. So are there ways that you can do this as you try to sort of figure out who you are as it comes to money?
Sure. I also think they can change.
Okay.
I also think that they can change. I notoriously would say that, yes, I'm a money nerd. I enjoy, saving for the future. I just want to make sure that we're saving for the future. And there are things about money that my husband is a nerd on. There are certain things that he loves getting a deal. So if we're getting any type of services done and that kind of thing, he's going to always negotiate. He's good at it. And me, I'm like, I'm not that way, right? And so I think sometimes it's great to take a personality quiz, right? And kind of understand where you are, and are things shifting and changing at different phases of life, discussing, your spending habits and your patterns. What do you enjoy? Is there a sore spot? Is there a place where it's going to be a weakness, and that you're going to want to spend money in that place? And sometimes just making sure that you say those things aloud and say, can you help me with this? Is there a way that we could just hold me accountable? And I've done that many times. I'm the budget coach. I've done this for years. And I've often gone to my husband and said, hey, I need accountability in this particular area. And the nerd and the money loves that, to be honest, right? And so when he, would bring those things up, I'm like, I asked for it. And this is going to help us, if we're doing that together. So I just think, it's important that you, again, just continue to keep it open. We also like to just diffuse situations with laughter. That's just a way that we navigate life. And so I think people need to understand how to, what is the thing that's going to help diffuse the situation? I think that could be key in some of these money conversations too.
Are there any other ways to kind of prevent ongoing arguments about spending or saving or money? I love the laughter idea.
A big thing is don't talk about money when somebody is tired.
Oh boy.
If they're tired, yeah, I mean, seriously. Like sometimes we want the answer right when we want the answer, and it's not a great time for our partner. And so if they're tired, it's right after work, or the kids are running around screaming, or you're heading off and it's urgent that you have to get to another place. These are not good times. Yeah, these are not good times. And I would encourage the person who is more of, the money person, that they just ask their partner, when do you want to talk about it? Allow them to tell you when it's the best time to talk. And I just think that could really be helpful. So we need to just give our partner the same courtesy that we might give to someone else. It's easy to take these things for granted, and we don't have time to take it for granted. We're losing money every time we are not on the same page with our finances. And so the sooner that people can gain control over that, the better.
Yeah. Yeah. So do it at the early part of the road trip then, right?
Yeah,
Don't do it
for sure.
mile 500.
That's right.
When you're both tired. But I love that idea of just showing grace and also allowing for space, like literally space, if this is just not the right time. Because it's just better to pause and revisit it when it's a better time than to try to keep forcing it and then create conflict that comes from that.
Yeah. Yeah. No one wants to be backed into a corner doing that.
No.
Yeah.
No. How do you coach couples to compromise without resentment?
That's a biggie. Because people tend to go down that path. Sometimes I think that you can just walk into it and say, hey, I don't want to cause any trouble here. I just want to make sure that we get an understanding about this one particular point. Is this something that you're ready to talk about? Right. And then I would just, again, ask some big questions about, where is this coming from? Tell me more about this resentment. Have you felt this before? I think good questions help a lot of situations. And then also just zoom out a little bit. Sometimes we're so focused on our particular moment right now, like these 30 days or this particular goal that's immediate, that we can't see the bigger picture, right? So if you delay a conversation about investing for your future until the kids are in school, you might have lost 5 or 6 years of very important time that your money can be working for you. And so let's zoom out a little bit and say, okay, so we might not need to talk about it today, but definitely by the end of the month, let's make sure that we have this conversation. When would that be good? And so we don't want, resentment comes when you're feeling backed into a corner, that you're feeling like you need to push back, right?
Yeah.
And you feel like your opinions aren't being validated. But when you take that step out and you can see bigger and say, okay, if our bigger picture goal is this, how can we achieve that? And when is it good for us to have this conversation so we're not kicking the can down the road? That's not going to be helpful. But again, bringing in empathy, slowing down, making sure that you're creating a safe space is important, and hearing the perspective of your partner so that you're not in a place where you're shutting out, all of thoughts and feelings that they have.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of that not yet mentality. Like if we can't do it right now, let's just set a time that we agree upon in the future so that we don't delay it forever and waste all this time, but also build in some space if we need it, and the power of that. Okay. So we really covered just a lot of just tricky things as we navigate communication and misalignment and mistrust and all these sorts of things. But like we said at the start, finances can actually be fun too. I mean, I guess maybe we should have our spouses, maybe they should be the one doing this.
That's right.
This episode together so we could hear what they really think. But as you dream together about the future, I was just curious, could you walk us through a dream building session that you've done before, and how to get people excited and be aligned for something that's actually a fun goal in the future?
I love when we can dream. We take a step back. We're not looking at numbers, no numbers here. And sometimes you're closing your eyes. And sometimes you are just trying to figure out how to cast this vision, but you want to know, where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years or 15 years? What does that picture look like? I want you to give me the visual. Who do you want to be financially? I love this question because if we're not who we want to be, there are some steps that'll help us get there. And so when we're thinking about 5 or 10 or 15 years and what we want to see, what are some of the milestones? How do we get there? How do you see us getting there? Is there anything in the way right now? I love that question, because if there's something in the way that makes it hard for a person to reach and accomplish the goal, let's figure out how to get it out of the way, and then think about what the first step is. What is the one step that you can take or we can take together to get closer to that goal? And then we're just bringing it even closer.
Mm-hmm.
Are we really committed to that one step? Are we really committed? So I think that we don't take enough time to ask all of these questions.
Right, we don't.
We just don't. And we also don't take enough time to make it a visual representation. I did my first vision board probably 8 or 10 years ago. And I was reluctant, as a matter of fact. I was on a retreat with some ladies and they were doing a vision board, and I had a conversation with my family back home. And then I was just, dragging my feet, really, because I was like, I don't need to do this vision board. And then I came in there and I just got so excited about all the magazines and flipping through it. And I was like, wow, this is kind of fun, but I didn't want to admit it. And I think that could be, like, we've done vision board parties since then. Like, it just became a whole thing. That's a way to make vision casting fun. We put some of our financial milestones on. Well, in that original one, I put financial milestones on that vision board. When we've done our own, we've done that as well. Well, the goals that we have for the year, I did one for this year, just about a vacation we wanted to go on, and it was a picture of it on there.
Wow.
So you can visually see it, and they're in my office so that I can see it all the time. And it keeps you focused. It gives you a reminder of where you were in January. It helps you to understand that this can be enjoyable. And I also think that when we're thinking about our dreams and our goals, we got to celebrate along the way. Sometimes these things are far away. If we're talking about where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years, that's a long way away.
Long time.
So you need milestones. So what is the first milestone? What is the second milestone? Those kinds of things. And how are we going to celebrate moving forward? Because it's really about progress. It's not perfection. The journey is never perfect, but it's about making progress. And if you can see you're making progress, again, everybody wins. So I just think we need to get quiet enough. Sometimes it's journaling. It might be creating a vision board. It might be, for us right now, it's sitting on the back porch and just kind of talking through what do the next 5 years look like and what would be fun to do. Where can we make a bigger impact? And when you get quiet and focus on it, there's so many different things that come up. And you just never knew that you were that creative.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that idea of like visualizing your goals, even finding goals that you want to do together as a couple or as a family that are exciting. I think all those can be just sort of help you stick with it, especially if they're longer term goals. Now, as you think about balancing short term and long term, how do you help couples prioritize these different goals?
It can be a challenge. I love the 4 quadrants: the important, non-important, and urgent and not urgent. And and I know this feels tactical. I know it's tactical, but I think if people can understand that some things are really urgent and it needs to happen right now. The bills got to get paid today. Or the electricity is going to get cut off, right? But the not important, are we spending too much time on those things? And it's also not urgent. So if we're thinking about this quadrant, that could be really helpful for people to understand, what do we focus on right now?
Yeah.
And then it's important, but it might not be urgent. And I think that's long-term planning. It's not today, but if we don't start today, it's going to be harder tomorrow. So you might as well start today, right? And so I think once you understand what's important and what's urgent, then you can start delineating money to each of these. I also think it's important for people to think about and like forecast, for instance, how long is it going to take them for some of these longer term goals? And are they okay with that?
Yeah.
It took us 5 years to get out of over $90,000 in debt. And I wish that it was less time than that. But I like to help people to see, how long is it going to take you to accomplish this goal?
Yep.
And if that's not fast enough, let's figure out how we can make some changes so that you can get there faster. And so then it becomes even more important and more urgent to do that. But if, some of the longer term goals, you can still do some calculations and see how long is it going to take you to get there? Are you still going to be on track? Again, then you can make some educated guesses on how you can move forward or change the dollar amounts today for those goals as well. But I just think we don't take our finances seriously enough to create the quadrant of all of the things that we really want. And I think that could be a really easy way for people to really figure out where to focus their energy, both for long-term and short-term goals.
Yeah, I love laying out the playing field, and you're on the same team. You're taking a step back, you're looking at it, and that can help you prioritize, and it can also help you to really be honest about how long it might take to reach some of those goals. And if it's not fast enough, that's an interesting one to bring up. That maybe we need to boost our income, or maybe we need to change the plan of how big that expense is going to be, or something like that. If you have some more control over it, so I love the idea of taking a step back. We don't do that, and maybe a way to have. We could build that into those 15-minute long conversations, where we just do, one at a time. We kind of start to build that map so we can see it, and then maybe have a longer session where you take a step back and really make a plan for the new year. And this is any time is really a great time of the year to be able to do that.
Absolutely. And I think, honestly, we are CEO or CFO of our finances. And, if we see ourselves, our financial life as our business, the entity that we're taking that seriously, we would do those types of things. We would write it down. And you are much more likely to go after a goal if you've written it down. Period. If you've written it down, you're much more likely to achieve it.
Totally. Are there any obstacles that come up as you're doing these dream building sessions, and just ways you've helped couples overcome this?
I think that one of the ways that people kind of hinder themselves is they don't relax enough to think about it. They're too serious about certain things. I think that they're not being honest about what they really want. They're afraid to be truthful about what it is that's happening. There's a lot of doubts. We doubt ourselves and our ability to do it. Sometimes people begin to think it's just going to take too long. Why do this? Or I'm going to have debt forever. And so some of these mental thoughts keep people from really taking action, right? And if it is going to take a while, break it down into manageable pieces, right? So maybe the goal, if somebody had told me it was going to take 5 years to get out of debt, I'd have been like, that's a long time, right? But when we paid off our credit card debt, we were really excited. And then when we paid off a car, you're like, who does this? This is exciting. We were even more excited. And then when we paid off the student loans, we were like, yes, that's the biggest one. You get excited, but these were the bite-sized pieces to the bigger goal. And it took time. And during that process, we even paused for a month or two to go actually have a family vacation on cash. We even did that in the middle of it. We experienced a job layoff during that time. Lots of things happened. We lost family members, so we had emergencies, and life happens. And sometimes we're, breaking these goals down, and then we kind of have to pause. Life comes at you. And so I think that's why it's important to also celebrate success, because progress is success. And you don't want to be waiting for 5 years, or 10 years to celebrate. You want to make sure that you stay motivated, and that's part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's just a whole nother reason why doing this together can be so meaningful, because then you can celebrate together, merging your finances, having shared goals, and then sort of attacking financial issues together is so rewarding. And then you guys got to have these celebration moments that kept you motivated and kind of maybe even accountable to each other to stick with it too, when it would have been really tough if you were on your own. So
yep.
Ericka, thanks so much. This is so great. So many practical tips, and you got me thinking about, wow, we need to do those 15-minute long conversations every week, I think. So
awesome.
We appreciate the insightful conversation and just everything you've shared today. You've given us a lot to think about. And thank you to our listeners. If you enjoyed today's conversation, join us in the future as we continue to explore new ways of building a healthy financial life together.